Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Citrus Corner as part of Orange Grove 55. We got a lot to talk about today. Some Disney discounts, some retheming to a popular Disney water park, even dive into some Universal news. I got my two brothers here with me. We're going to talk it all today with you on Citrus Corner. I love that jam. I'm going to have to download that on my phone. That's awesome.
Kind of jazzy.
Jazz hands. Well, as I had mentioned, everyone, welcome to another episode of Citrus Corner. Before we get started, let me introduce you to my panel today, my two brothers, my comrades, my collaborators. These guys, the three of us, we do a lot of damage. I'm going to start down below here to the man wears many hats, many coats. We have Mr. Vash Sky, host of Freshly Squeezed, producer Dre, Dr. Dre, the DA. How are you today, sir?
The DA.
Oh man, with that district attorney stuff. Hey, well, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Come for you. That's the thing. Because Dre's got your back here. Listen, I do appreciate you having me on, George. This is wonderful to be back in the saddle again with the three of you. It's fantastic. It's awesome, and talking about some subjects that are quite interesting that I'm sure we have a lot of opinions on. So this should be really fun. Anyway, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go do so right down there at Vash Sky. Just go ahead and type it in just like that. And I should pop up for, as Christine Waysigns McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. Oh, gee, you got my drop there for me?
Oh, I absolutely do. Give me 1 second, sir. We got Walt here with the...
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all. Well, I think he was talking about Orange Grove 55 and how you subscribe to that, because it really is a bargain, folks. We're giving you Citrus Corner content, we're giving you OG55 content, and of course, you can see me there at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
I think that would be pretty cool, so definitely subscribe.
Awesome. And of course, joining us today too is the OG himself, the OG, as part of the channel, Mr. Orange Grove 55. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing great, George. Thank you so much for having me on Citrus Corner. We're going to talk Walt Disney World. Have a great time. Let's rock and roll.
There we go.
Fantastic.
All right, so let's kick this conversation off with some news that Disney had released about. I mean, they've been talking about price hikes at the wazoo, price hikes with tickets, price hikes with this and that. But we actually got a little bit of a break here that they are actually offering a discounted price. Lo and behold, for Walt Disney World Resort hotels. And this is going in different waves. They're going to have it, and this is for anybody, but also Disney had mentioned on their website, this is also for Disney Plus subscribers that save 20% off of hotel stays as well during the time of December 11th of this year to December 25th, Christmas Day, which I find very interesting that they would offer a discounted rate for supposedly one of the most popular times to visit a Disney park during the holiday season. So let's start off there. Just that alone I find that interesting. Do you fellas think that they're not anticipating that much of crowds because they're kind of gearing towards just the ticket holders and they're not leaning more towards annual pass holders, but now they feel like they're kind of stuck to get those hotel rooms filled up? What do you fellas think? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Vash Sky.
I think this is all kind of really interesting because, I mean, we don't really get to the news of discounting much anymore, right? Coming out of the Walt Disney Company for just about anything. So the fact that they would actually discount rooms to this extent, $400 off, obviously there might be a little recognition of Disney Plus there.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other kind of thing. it's interesting because WDW Pro, actually, friend of the show, friend of the channel, actually had an article about this on thatparkplace.com, and says Disney World drops hotel prices during the holidays. And I thought he broke it down real nice. It's no shock that Walt Disney World would have hotel cost reductions during less crowded times, January through February. Sans President's Day weekend is one of the emptiest times that you can visit the Walt Disney World Resort. December, however, is a totally different story. People love visiting Walt Disney World during the Christmas season. So why on earth would Disney be dropping hotel prices by hundreds of dollars during what should be one of the busiest peak seasons of the year? This is one of those times when I say, quote, read the tea leaves. They're not discounting like this unless they need to. I would agree with you. I think there is a reason for this. Disney Plus, the inclusion of that obviously comes to mind. We have been talking about for some time now that a lot of those original 3-year plans that people had signed up for with regards to Disney Plus back during its launch in November of 2019. Well, they're coming up for renewal now. And so how do we keep people on the program? Well, we feature discounting like this, right? And that incentivizes not just people to renew their memberships, but also to subscribe new guests, right? So there's definitely that whole thing attached to it, but like we've been predicting for some time here, as economic conditions worsen and so forth, as a little bit of this revenge type visitation that we've been seeing, this revenge vacationing that we've been seeing ever since the lockdowns that occurred in 2020, 2021, and so forth. Now that those are kind of, let's say, coming to their conclusion, let's say, maybe this is a reflection of that a little bit. Maybe the international visitation isn't as, let's say, robust as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, largely because a lot of these other countries are going through their own kind of problems, not just as it relates to the pandy, but also economically and so forth. So maybe this also has something to do with that.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. Sorry, OG, that if you actually bring up the article again, that yes. the dates where yes. I can kind of understand where it says most Sunday through Thursday nights from January 2nd through February 28th. I can understand that because before the times of the busy times, those were the months that they didn't really see too much of attendance. But also, I'm looking at March 1st through March 30th, and there are different times that's also during spring break between March and April. So you have two different time frames where they get a lot of traction, and that I'm great that they offered a discount, but I'm a little bit concerned that the attendance is dropping, but maybe that's the kick in the pants that Disney needs. What do you think, OG?
Okay, so I think it kind of comes down to just like what Dre was talking about. I think that these companies are starting to get worried about the economy, and they're starting to put forth these kind of discounts to kind of mitigate some of the damage done by the economy. I don't necessarily think it's like a Disney necessarily exclusive thing. Like if you go on, give me one sec, let me share my screen real quick. The Universal Orlando site, you're getting heavy discounts as well. And some of it, like right here, Universal's Endless Summer, they're discounting in August. I mean, that's summertime. I mean, that's a busy time, but not just that. You could save 20% on 2-bedroom suites. And that's also this December, this holiday season. So right. I think that these companies are just looking at the tea leaves with the economy. They know, like you said, Ray, like the international travel, all that's going to start drying up. Inflation is through the roof. Gas prices are through the roof. And I think they're just trying to lure people in as much as they can. Now, in terms of Disney, though, I think it's a smart move with the Disney Plus connection because you're killing two birds with one stone. You're incentivizing people to go to your hotels and your theme parks, and you're incentivizing people to sign up for that D Plus. I think that was a really clever move on their part to kind of tie those together. I think we're going to start seeing more of that synergy on the financial end, more and more and more going forward. This is not the end of that, I'll tell you that. But yeah, I think overall it's economic conditions kind of fueling this. And because look, I mean, the economy right now, there's no indication it's getting better anytime soon. There's more indication it's going to be worsening. So I think that's what's going on overall.
Yeah, we just got the Fed, Fed hike increase in terms of the interest rates and so forth, 0.75 percentage points, which is pretty big there. There are indications, I think, I Am for Fun, which we have, promoted on the channel before. His YouTube channel, he goes into some indications that the travel is maybe slowing down a little bit. Apparently, rooms aren't necessarily being as booked out as much as they were before. Same goes for airline travel and so forth. So there's definitely some indicators that demand is waning just a little bit. Now, as far as it being a kind of Disney specific thing, I do agree with you, OG. I don't think it's necessarily Disney specific. I think this does speak to maybe wider things that we're seeing. Industry wide. I think this is something that we're seeing not only from Disney, but like you mentioned, Universal, Six Flags is famously down. I think their last quarterly earnings report, I'd have to actually check because I think their most recent one actually just came out recently. But I think it was a Q3, which had them down like 20% in terms of attendance. Wow. That's quite a bit right there. So I think we are seeing a little bit of some slowdown here, which is why we might be seeing the incentivization for guests to stay even during the busiest months of the year.
Yeah. I agree. And I do really think, as the recession is setting in, and a lot of people can deny it. I'm sorry, folks. It's happening one way or the other.
Look, I understand that there are some people who are maybe incentivized to lead you to think differently of the economy. But I can assure you, folks, I mean, every single indicator is pointing towards that direction. Sorry, George, go ahead.
I know you're good. But yeah, on Disney's behalf, yeah, I can understand, like with all the other companies that are doing, Disney has to follow with that tide. Otherwise, they're going to put themselves in a deep poo-poo hole, so to speak. I'll be nice. I'll be good. But at the same time, I also think it can kind of give Disney a direction of where to move forward even after, recession terms go through, to say, what, maybe we can readjust so it's not as high, but maybe not as low, and kind of like meet in the middle. I kind of hope that's what happens. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but one could hope.
Well, that's the thing about their pricing strategy. It always allows them the ability to reduce prices via temporary discounting when the conditions or market conditions call for it, right? So that's what they've done historically. That's what they definitely did during 2001, 2008, and so forth. I think we might be seeing more of that as time goes on. Also, too, though, the incentivization to have subscribers not churn out or actually, incentivize them to renew their subscriptions, bring on new subscribers via Disney Plus, I think is also a new strategy for them. So expect more of those things in the future. But George, I think that brings us to our...
actually, real quick, Ray, before we go on, I just want to say too, that's kind of like when we talk a lot about, excuse me, when we talk a lot about the effect on high prices with like the fans and stuff, or like guests, the flexibility of the pricing is like, this pricing is not like etched in stone, like I said before, like the 10 commandments, right? Like if they raise prices to a point where people they get fed up, like they are no longer going, they have, like Waistlines McCarthy said, they have the levers to lower prices, and they've always had those levers, really.
Yes.
So it's not really, in my opinion, like this existential crisis for the brand overall, because if the demand falls off, they can pull back. And they will. Yeah. And so you're always going to have this kind of push and pull. Nothing's ever going to be set to the point where it's like, where they can't move from it, and fans are walking away and their parks are empty. They can always lower those prices if they need to. The thing is, though, right now, fans aren't like budging. Like, it's expensive as hell. They're mad about it, but they're still going in droves. So that's why you're not really seeing too much of a lowering, but at least we're getting some relief in the hotel arena, which is nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, and that reduction might be necessary, because I think there is a line at which people may push back a little bit, and I think we're experiencing that not at any number of let's say traditional accommodations at the Walt Disney World Resort, but maybe something that was a little bit ambitious on their part, maybe an immersive hotel experience, maybe in the form of the Galactic Starcruiser Star Wars voyage there. Apparently, via Walt Disney World News today, occupancy not quite as robust as maybe it had been initially. George, you want to take it away here?
Absolutely. And again, this was no surprise to me that the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, as Dre had mentioned, is only filled up 25% occupancy and cutting cast member hours and even on select voyages the second dinner seating. And remember, folks, you're paying a premium arm and a leg of $5,000 to $6,000 for a 2-night experience, and to then now have to have this kind of restricted and construed to just one sit-down dinner, and they're going to cut cast member hours. So how much immersive storytelling are you going to have? But again, does the price change? No. And this is where my issue was, when you kind of already have a set timeline with something that is the same story that you can practically get in Galaxy's Edge with a theme park ticket with Rise of the Resistance and the Smuggler's Run and what have you, but you're going to pay $5,000 to $6,000 to do something like this. And then after you do it once, are you really going to pay another $5,000, $6,000 to do it again? And I think after a year or so, this is what's going to happen. OG, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the issue. There's two problems, I think, with the Starcruiser that's really hurting it. Number one, like you mentioned, George, the timeline. They got to get rid of that. They got to have, if they're going to do this whole cruise thing, then have different itinerary, like an original trilogy itinerary, have itinerary based on the prequels, have itinerary even based on like the Mandoverse or whatever. You can do, the potential is endless. So they got to do that. That's number one. Number two is they got to stop. I know the whole cruise thing is like a shtick they're doing, and it's a clever shtick. I think it's actually a really great idea, this Galactic cruise. It's actually really brilliant. The problem, though, is it's not really a cruise. So don't price it like a real cruise. If they were to price this thing like a high-end Disney hotel, maybe like the Grand Floridian or the Grand Californian, along those lines, and you had those different itineraries for different eras and what have you, and keeping it fresh, I think this thing would be an enormous success. But those two things, the pricing and the timeline, are keeping people away, in my opinion.
And honestly, OG, the article, when you sent it over to me, and I just got to look at the I'm just going to call it what it looks like to me, a hospital cafeteria, and the dining mess hall, so to speak. It just doesn't scream Star Wars to me. And I know that we just had done a recent recording for the 35th anniversary of Star Tours, and for how much that was a classic original attraction, that screams more Star Wars than
absolutely.
I mean, I look at this. If someone were to just take a picture of what's on the screen and send it to someone and say, what would you say this is? I couldn't make heads or tails at all that this is a $5,000 to $6,000 Star Wars experience. I'm sorry, Disney, but in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I could be in the minority on this, you dropped the ball with this. I'm sorry.
I think that's definitely reflected in some of the problems that they're encountering right now, right? So I guess some sailings are going with as few as 25% occupancy, and we're talking only 100 rooms. Maybe I think the article speculates that it could be, you could be capped out in terms of guest capacity at 500 people. And so the fact that they can't even find that many to consistently kind of book this experience out here, I mean, it definitely reflects, I think, like we said, the misalignment of expectations, right? That misalignment between what guests really expect and what they want from an experience like this versus what they're actually getting, not only in terms of the quality, but in terms of price as well. So, and I guess they're cutting back on cast member roles as well when it comes to this as a result of these not booking out. And from what I understand, 2023 there isn't a single day booked in the entire year. So it's or booked out, I should say. So it is. I think it is pretty concerning here for sure. I mean, this was quite the ambitious investment, and it was priced to be profitable. Because you have just a host of different cast members, both performers and just regular cast members that deliver that kind of quality experience and service to you. So obviously it was priced for that, and the fact that it can't book out even at this level, I mean, something has to change. And I think we predicted it, right? We predicted okay, in the first 6 months or year, maybe you'll see bookings kind of sunset off here. And maybe it'd be, demand would abate by that time, and maybe we should probably rethink this concept, maybe with new characters, as you two point out, but also, maybe, I don't know, at this point, I mean, if you look at that right there, it doesn't necessarily feel like Star Wars, like George said, and I do think that is a correct assessment right there. So maybe it might be time to maybe go back, refurbish, rehab this thing, and make it into the quality Star Wars experience that people have come to expect.
Yeah, no, 100%. And when you talk about, George, you mentioned Star Tours feels like Star Wars. You can take that character, Captain Rex, and throw him into a movie, and it fits. I mean, I think that his type of droid has shown up in Star Wars Rebels. It's also shown up in, I think, Boba Fett, right? Wasn't his droid, or not him specifically, but his kind of droid, one of the baggage checkers in that show? I mean, so the fact that they took that design and utilized it in the shows shows you just how Star Warsy it feels. Now, is the content going to borrow from the cruiser? Oh. Probably not. Why? Right. Well, it doesn't really feel like Star Wars.
And that's my fear too, because when they first opened the Starcruiser, they went balls to the wall. They had all the cast members ready. There you go. There we go. They had all the cast members ready. They had the aliens, what have you, the storyline between Kylo and Rey. Again, same storyline. No big surprise there. But they still had a production, which I thought was decently done. But as time goes on and they realize that they're not having enough people in the Starcruiser at one time, that's going to hinder the performances, because they're going to start, as they're cutting cast member hours, they're going to start maybe cutting performances. They're going to start cutting interactions with the characters, and then pretty much it's a shell of a building, but you're still forking out $5,000 to $6,000 just to experience it. And I've said it once before. I said it once. I said it twice. I'll say it again. Where the Starcruiser location is, they had so much room and potential that they could have even expanded out Galaxy's Edge to maybe incorporate some of those traditional original characters or the prequel storylines. They could have opened Galaxy's Edge up, but instead they went for something that cost more up front, but it's going to hurt them in the long run. And I know we didn't get a discussion like this on this subject matter yet, but just briefly, that's sort of kind of what Shanghai Disney is going through right now. It was out of the gate. It was very popular. It brought in a lot of money, but it's starting to slowly deteriorate.
It's tricky because, I think Shanghai and Hong Kong and those kind of things. I mean, once you got a sense of where the Chinese government was going, I think those things maybe were doomed to fail. And there's definitely going to be some more content produced as far as that goes. I know our buddy Captain John D is actually producing a series right now going into the Bob Iger era, and part of that is going to be, the Disney's presence in China and so forth. So definitely look out for that for sure. But I mean, George, you're kind of right. It's you're starting kind of a shaky foundation, and look at where we're at right here. And unfortunately, when it came to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, this is kind of follows that already kind of shaky foundation. I mean, even before Starcruiser even opened, Galaxy's Edge just kind of look at it as, well, it has potential, but it's not where it quite needs to be right now. And unfortunately, they double down with Starcruiser, and it's like, now it's even more kind of tied to this kind of universe and theming and so forth. And I guess the missions that you embark on the Starcruiser interact with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge directly, which is why they can't have characters like Mando, Grogu, Fennec Shand, and Boba Fett actually walk around just like they can in the Disneyland version. And now it's like, it's not quite where it needs to be. And I think for more of this story, I know our buddy Drunk 3PO knows a lot of that. Apparently, he has some contacts associated with this project right here. And I guess both Drunk 3PO and Valiant Renegade on his channel, they're going to have a team up and talk about this as well. So I would encourage folks to also check that out because it should be being uploaded today. So very interesting.
It's an interesting thing. I think I've always liked the concept of this galactic cruise. I think that they nailed it in regards to the concept. I just think that the execution is off. I think it's far too limiting. And I think it's just far too expensive. And I think if they can address some of this stuff, the pricing, the timeline, and all that, I think this thing could really be something unique and very special. And I think that the success of this it opens the doors for potential, not just for Disney with other franchises like Marvel and what have you, but even for companies like Universal. Imagine like a 3-night immersive hotel experience based on Jurassic World. I mean, how freaking awesome would that be?
No, that'd be kind of cool.
It'd be amazing, right? So I want to see this concept, these immersive kind of like hotel experiences utilized more and more with different franchises, different IPs, different theme park companies. So I'm rooting for the Starcruiser. I'm 100% rooting for it, but there are real pretty massive issues with it, holding it back, and they got to address that. And one thing they really got to do is they got to call Dave Filoni and they got to call Jon Favreau into the room and ask these guys, what would you want to see? Because they have more of a finger on the pulse with the fandom than say Kathleen Kennedy or even Imagineering, to be quite honest. You're going to want to have like a Favreau in that room or a Filoni to kind of guide you a little bit. So
Yeah. And I think, honestly, Disney and even other companies are going to hold off on extending this branch of entertainment until the Starcruiser gets fixed, because I don't think anyone is going to invest any more kind of money, because even other companies, Universal, they're looking at Disney saying, you know what, do we really want to invest any of our time, effort, and money into something that's just not working for them right now? So maybe like in time, the Starcruiser, if it turns out to be what everyone anticipated, then maybe everyone will hop on that train. But right now, I don't think they will.
Which is so tragic, because you can see, like, I think Harry Potter immediately comes to mind, right? What if you were going through the school of becoming a wizard and you get to stay in the dormitories? And it just sets itself naturally up for this concept and idea. But you're right, George. I mean, I think a lot of other companies are looking at this going, maybe not for me, not right now. So, and also tragic is this is Chapek's kind of baby. This is what he felt was like going to revolutionize the theme park concept in general. Really kind of put them on a path that they previously didn't envision themselves being in. So to see a concept like this burgeoning on kind of this revolution in terms of themed experience not really take off, it is kind of tragic for the reasons that you both mentioned, because it's like, man, this really could have gone somewhere. And Chapek did have plans to bring this abroad and bring this to every single Disney theme park resort concept around the world. And unfortunately, we might not see that.
Well, and the thing too is that this is the big issue with this thing. I was talking to Dre about this on the phone the other day. If the Starcruiser was like a standalone hotel, say on the Las Vegas Strip, right? I think for this price point, it might do better, because you're paying $5,000, but that's all you're paying. Like, that's the experience, whatever, out the door. But having it attached to Walt Disney World, you're adding a very pricey thing onto an already very pricey thing. It really does kneecap it. It really does. If it was a standalone hotel in Las Vegas or even New York or something, it's more affordable. But to tack this on to a Walt Disney World vacation, which is already costing you thousands and thousands of dollars, it's just not feasible for most families, and that's a big problem too. This concept is a good one. Like Chapek is not necessarily wrong in that this could revolutionize themed entertainment. It absolutely can.
The execution.
You build the same thing. If you were to build these highly immersive themed hotels across the country, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, whatever, they would do very well. But you got to price it right, and you got
Cafe Lou.
Cafe Lou, yeah. Orange County residents might know about Cafe Lou, but we won't get into that here, right, George?
Right. No. we're gonna leave it right there. We're not gonna touch it. Okay, we're not
gonna. Well, don't touch, George. You can look, don't touch.
Yes,
but but no, I mean, it's interesting you point that out. I mean, and Disney has had this kind of idea of bringing kind of resort hotel concepts across various areas of the country. That's kind of where Aulani actually came from, was this idea that you can bring the Disney, a Disney type experience to places outside the theme parks themselves. It never really took up, but you're right, OG. It's like you could do something like this in various other markets, but I mean, I guess that's why they built that Walt Disney World first, because it's like, well, if give it the best chance to work, if it's going to work anywhere, then it obviously should work at Walt Disney World. The fact that it's not working there, maybe it is part of the price point attached to it, right? Where
and if they
it's $6,000, and go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and if they were to put it in Walt Disney World for whatever reason, the placement, I would have never placed it in where they could have expanded an actual theme park, especially a theme park that needs to expand out of all the four. And also the entranceway is, I'm sorry, it's diabolical. It's like, it's such an eyesore that you go behind this road with, and you see the back of Galaxy's Edge with the Lollipop Mountains. It's the Lollipop Mountains. It's like right out the gate. They want an immersive experience, but it's not.
They break your immersion right there.
Right there. It's like out of the gate. It's like you're not even in this thing, and it's like it's not even there. And it's like they're trying to tie it into Galaxy's Edge, but then as mentioned before, you have the same storyline. So it's like you go into Galaxy's Edge. Oh, you board a ship. You get kidnapped by Kylo Ren. You board the first order ship. You have to escape. Okay, well, we'll continue the storyline on to the Galactic Starcruiser for 2 nights. Oh, look, well and behold, here's Kylo Ren. He kidnapped us on a starship. It's like, can we get out of that storyline, please?
I agree. No, and to give you guys an idea of just how out of price range this is for your average guest, right? I mean, I have leaked footage. Look at Chewie pre-gaming it before he went to the bar over there at the Starcruiser. I mean, this guy's bringing his own Modelo into the hotel, into the Starcruiser. You can't even afford the bar.
That's tough.
It's tough, man.
I am going to say this. I'm not going to get into the numbers, but I'm just going to say, as of everyone knows, the three of us are going to take a nice big Walt Disney World vacation next year. Everything that I have planned, as far as with how many tickets I needed for hotel accommodations for 7 people, I'm actually including my mom and her boyfriend. They're going to have their own place, but I'm just including them in this because I'm the master of vacation plannings, if you will, for Walt Disney World. It is still cheaper of what we are doing compared to the Starcruiser.
Wow.
Is it really?
It is.
Insane.
Oh my God. I would
That's
never have
insane.
guessed that. I would never have guessed that.
That's crazy. And we're going to be there for like, what is it, 2 weeks or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
That
this is a
surprising.
2-night experience.
That's surprising. It's super surprising.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money. It's a
And
lot.
There's potential here. That's the devastating thing. There
That's the
is
thing.
potential here.
Right.
If you could theme this correctly, price it correctly, oh my gosh, I think this would take off.
Oh, it
But
would.
you can't have a $6,000 experience for that. This doesn't work. Sorry, OG, go ahead.
No, it's a simulator cruise. It's not a real cruise. And again, the concept is cool, but it's not. You're not going anywhere. You can't charge $5-6 grand for this. It's just too much. You know,
Take-
$800. If this thing was $800, right, or something like that, and even 900, 1,000 even, this thing would book up like crazy because it's worth that for sure, and that's affordable. That's doable. But $6,000? Come on now.
Yeah.
And maybe you rely on, I don't know, instead of like living kind of actors and so forth, maybe you rely on more automation in order to make this a little bit more affordable. I think there are ways to do this, but at its current price point, there's just no way. It just doesn't make physical sense. It's a little bit irresponsible at its current price point.
Right.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
It's crazy.
You got to be Jay-Z to afford it. And you got to Jay-Z and Beyonce. I mean, they're the only ones that can go.
You gotta be a baller.
But yeah, Disney is just stuck in their ways with Star Wars right now, and they just have to let it go. And speaking of let it go, that moving on to our next topic here, that one of Disney World's popular water parks, Blizzard Beach, is finally reopening on November 13th, but with a little snowflake flair, if you will. They are adding a IP theme, go figure, to with Frozen to its water park, which, I mean, I can understand it. You know, you have Olaf the snowman. You know, it's all about a wintry blizzard storm that came across this ski resort, and it started melting and it became a water park. That's the storyline of Blizzard Beach. So why not incorporate Olaf and all the Frozen characters into it? Especially, you know, it's fun for, you know, the young kids and what have you. But I thought it was a nice little thing to kind of bring up, especially because Blizzard Beach has been down for so long. And ever since the Pandy, Disney has been kind of going on this yin and yang with the water parks. If Typhoon Lagoon is closed, Blizzard Beach is open, and vice versa. They just can't get it together where both water parks could be open at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fans don't like this move because again, you're replacing kind of like an original character, like the alligator and everything, with this like more, you know, more with the movie IP. I don't have a problem. I mean, look, this looks fantastic. I mean, this looks really, really good, and it works. It works within this context. It looks great. Hey, why not utilize? Look, Disney has these mega franchises. Frozen is $1 billion franchise. You have that in your arsenal. Why not use it? Why not? You know, for me, this makes sense. I think these characters are more interesting than the alligator thing they had going on before. I don't know. Look, and I'm a Frozen fan, so maybe I'm biased, but I dig it. What do you think, Dre?
This news comes to us via Walt Disney World News Today. Got to give credit. And as part of that, Tom Corliss, I guess, was really kind of... I remember seeing his segment on this during his daily updates, and he was not quite happy about this. I mean, he was very much like, oh, man, this is going against the original storyline outline of the park. The combination of characters here doesn't even make sense. These little marshmallow guys don't even exist in this timeline with a kid-sized Elsa and Anna. All this kind of stuff, but I'm just like, wow, this is...
Are we going to Galaxy's Edge this thing?
I know. That's what I'm kind of saying. I'm like, look, listen.
That's something to bitch and complain about. That's something to bitch and complain about with the Starcruiser, not Frozen coming to Blizzard Beach.
I know. I know. And I was kind of taken aback, but I was like, is this really that serious? Like, it's just, come on. I mean, you know, there was a concept that was rolled out for these water parks initially, and well, times change, expectations change, and I think a lot of people really resonate with these characters. A lot of kids obviously do, as we know the streaming numbers. Frozen 2 get from what I understand very good. Watch time every single month. So it's like, why not integrate these characters that people love, that people expect, that people want to see, and so forth, in a park that is especially apt for them to be in. These aren't going in Typhoon Lagoon; these are going into Blizzard Beach. But I think the bigger. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, don't lose your thought. But I also think too is a lot of people are having the misconception that this is going to be throughout the whole entire Blizzard Beach. Right now, this is in Tyke's Peak, which is the children's play area. It's not going to be at the top of Summit Plummet, which, although I would think it'd be kind of interesting that as you're going down Summit Plummet that if you happen to see Marshmallow, I think that'd be kind of cool, but don't even listen to me, Disney. That's just me being of, my own, in my weird kooky way. But again, this is the children's section that give them something relatable to. So, I mean, it's like Diz Twitter, like, relax, breathe.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. And look, I don't know. I mean, I guess since I lack some nostalgia for these various places here, I don't know. I think the original storyline is charming, but I could also see Elsa taking over a place like this and spreading her magic, right? And now it's like, oh, there's a reason why snow exists in the middle of Florida, right?
Makes sense.
So I can see it. And I know people are kind of really, not fond of IP being integrated into these parks in this way constantly, right? We have a buddy, Showcase of Wishes, right? He's very much a traditionalist, very much not on board with some of this stuff. And I get it. I understand, but I think IP is the future. And as Bob Iger has said, and I don't quote him very often anymore, but I think he was very right when he said, hey, if we aren't utilizing our IP, our competition would and will. And that's what they're doing, and they obviously have to compete with those market forces as they exist. So, but I think the bigger story here, though, is why isn't Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon operating simultaneously? I think it's a really interesting kind of thing that, I mean, I think some people are talking about, and I have my views as to why that might be happening. I think it's very much cast member related, and this kind of, the demand obviously for these water parks isn't quite the same as it has been pre-2020, right? I don't think the demand has ever been there super strongly, combined with, hey, we only have enough cast members to fully staff and fully operate one of these parks at a time. Do you think that might be it, George, or maybe this might be a reflection of yield management?
No, I think it could be, because I mean, it would make sense that if it's of cast member shortage, so when they close one water park down, those cast members can integrate over to the other water park. I do also think that from the shutdown, when Disney World primarily reopened, that they needed to have things kind of ready, and both water parks at the same time were not. So they had to pick and choose which one was going to be open and which one was going to go down for refurbishment. They did Typhoon Lagoon, and now with Typhoon Lagoon being open for quite some time, now they have to do a refurbishment. So I wonder, once Typhoon Lagoon gets that lengthy refurbishment like Blizzard Beach did, maybe Blizzard Beach will then stay open, and then Typhoon Lagoon will join it maybe within 6 months to a year. I hope that's the case, because it would be nice to see both water parks open at the same time. But if Blizzard Beach goes down again, once Typhoon Lagoon comes back up, I think it's pretty much safe to say it's a management type of issue and cast member shortage, and they just can't afford. Well, I mean, Disney can afford, but in that sense of having people being able to go in both water parks at the same time, I think would be detrimental in Disney's eyes if they have them both open at the same time.
OG, your thoughts?
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think that, when it comes to these IP and everything, I think there's a way to utilize them and there's a way not to. And in some cases they're very shoehorned, and in some cases they work. There's a way to incorporate them into these things. And I think in this circumstance with Blizzard Beach, I think it absolutely works. Absolutely. And I have no issue with it at all. None at all.
What's your take on, as far as, do you think in time that both water parks will be reopened again together, or do you think it's just going to be a back and forth type thing where one is done, one is operating, based off of possibly management or cast member cuts?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know enough about the operations of these parks, these water parks, to really, I don't know. The way things are going, and post Pandy with all the losses they incurred and all that. I mean, I think it's a possibility that they kind of go back and forth instead of having them both open at the same time. I think that's definitely a possibility. I honestly,
it feels like yield management to me.
Yeah, right.
For sure. And it's interesting because this is also something. So Blizzard Beach is opening when in January? They said
November 13th.
November 13th. Okay. I mean, from what I understand, these water parks haven't been open during the wintertime in quite some time. Usually they have a seasonal operations schedule where they open, I believe, like March, close.
Usually, like when spring, like when spring break comes along. So I find that kind of interesting that the reopening was interesting that they're going to do it midway through the start of the winter season.
So maybe this is a way to have a theme, a water park presence year round, not necessarily simultaneously. With these things open, but cascading in the way they are. It is kind of an interesting thing regarding these water parks. I know our buddy Showcase, actually, he's like, when are both water parks going to be open at the same time? Isn't this part of our annual pass? And that's true, but annual pass doesn't necessarily specify that they be open simultaneously.
Together.
Just that, both of them be offered. So...
Yeah,
very interesting.
And they get Walt Disney World annual pass holders get quite a deal with their passes compared to we out here with our Magic Keys.
Oh yeah,
pretty wild. Even with all things considered, with the water parks, and you guys still get quite a, as Walt would say.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
It's a big bargain. It's a big bargain.
There you go. But I do have to say, it is nice to see Blizzard Beach finally reopen. We were all kind of anticipating on it coming back online. And it just in general, it's nice to see things coming back to the parks that we've, it's been long and gated, waiting so long for things to come back up. For which there is a, did you want to say something?
One more thing, George.
Yes.
Do you think that there are going to be any other changes to Blizzard Beach? Because I know there were some big cranes out there. People were speculating. Do you think there's going to be anything bigger?
I think in time, I don't know if it's something as much right now, but I think they kind of started with Tykes Peak, kind of start out small, just to kind of dip their toes in the pool, no pun intended, to just kind of get like people's kind of feel for it, just to kind of let them know this is the direction they're going. But I do agree with you. I think in time, that Blizzard Beach may become Arendelle, just in time. I know I'm probably in the minority here. Diz Twitter is probably going to be knocking on my Twitter account saying, what the heck? But it's...
Oh, yeah. Well, here, we got to get some theme music for Diz Twitter after you said that, George.
Oh, man. There you go. Also, too, I think that's them. Actually, I think they're outside your door, George.
Yeah.
I think they're coming in. They're not happy about that. First it's sadness, then it ends up anger, right there.
Yes, and then followed by bloodshed.
Yeah, exactly.
But as I was saying, that it's nice to see Blizzard Beach coming back online, and then a lot of things coming back into the Disney parks, for which one nighttime spectacular in general for Walt Disney World that a lot of people were anticipating on, especially for how long it's been done and what changes were added to it. And yes, folks, it is Fantasmic. Walt Disney World's version is back online, and they had their big premiere, and I can't believe they had a standing ovation for the first time back. And I mean, I think it was kind of cool, to actually have a show as popular as Fantasmic, even though I do, for the most part, prefer Disneyland's version still over Walt Disney World. I'm glad to see that it's back up and running. Hollywood Studios needed its nighttime entertainment back, and I'm glad it's back full force. There are some things that I have to say about it, good and bad, but I'm going to hold off. I'm going to get your fellas' opinions first. I'm going to actually start with you, Dre. OG and I had talked about this for a little bit, so I want to get your take on Fantasmic coming back online for Walt Disney World.
a little overdue. Maybe this should have happened before, but I understand that there were some complications surrounding some of the unions who actually represent some of these performers and so forth, COVID policies and so forth, let's say. And so that kind of stunted work on bringing this back. But first impressions, I actually am very positive on them. This comes to us via Laughing Place. This kind of B-roll that they put out to the media, featuring some of the new segments and some of the updates that they made in the show. Positive for that they actually invested into the show. They actually added new lighting, new effects, lasers, and so forth. I mean, honestly, new projected effects and that. I've never seen the infrastructure built for Fantasmic out in Walt Disney World utilized to such an extent. It was great to see that they actually kind of expand the show almost in that way. New projectors, new mist screens, very much taller and so forth. All good so far. And yes, I do think the Pocahontas sequence was maybe a little bit long in the tooth, right? That was at a time that was very, very different. Obviously, when the Imagineers were envisioning this version of this show, it was with the kind of conceit that they wanted to go ahead and incorporate some of the new IP that was coming at that time. So I could see where they would want to maybe expand the character set a little bit from those days in the 1990s. However, while I do think the new segment is very well done, I do have some problems with it, but I'll get to that as we get deeper in this discussion. OG, your initial thoughts?
Yeah, overall, I mean, I think these are really positive changes. I like what they've done with the show. I think it looks great. I think it's honestly, in my opinion, never looked better, at least from what I've seen online. I've never been there, but from what I've seen online, I've watched the old show before, and I've seen this one. It looks fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. I am glad that it has returned. There's been a lot of complaints from the fans that they're paying more. Never before have they paid more for less. That is sort of not, that's not as much of a thing anymore as we move forward and things are opening up again. That's good. I'm really, really glad about that. I think that's a great thing. I love how they incorporate the fountains in a way where it's almost World of Color-ish in a lot of ways. I like that. Look at this. I love Snow White. I mean, not to get off topic, but I love Snow White. I mean, just think of Walt Disney almost 100 years ago now for Snow White making that film, and it's in a show at one of his parks in 2022. It just gives me goosebumps. Cool. But yeah, overall, very, very satisfied with how the show turned out. Now, I've told George it will never beat Disneyland because I think that the Disneyland version there's something organic about it, like a fireworks show where it's the show takes place in theme park that you walk around and experience during the day. So this whole thing erupts in the theme park. In Florida, Hollywood Studios, you walk into an amphitheater and sit down like you're waiting for Shamu, or it's a very
produced thing.
Very production. Produced. Yeah, it's very produced. We're walking to a theater. You're going to see a show. It's a stage. For me personally, I'm not too fond of that. I like the magic and the organic feel of Disneyland. I know it's uncomfortable sitting on the cobblestones and what have you, but I think it's worth it at the end. I think it's an overall better experience, in my opinion, because of that element to it. But overall, I don't think Walt Disney World fans should be upset at all. I mean, this turned out fantastic. I think for the most part, the fans are really, 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 really happy with it.
I think they are.
And and I think it's good.
Thanks, OG. Now, every time that I go into that amphitheater, I'm going to sit down waiting for a killer whale just to pop up and do one big splash.
Yeah, exactly. But
I do have to say, I agree with you both. I'm very happy overall. Good positive vibes coming off the show. I'm very thankful that they kept two things as part of the original Fantasmic show, and that is the beginning choreography of Mickey himself with the start of the Imagination song and what have you. That's the one thing I was disappointed in with the Disneyland version
Right,
is
right.
the new choreography. It just the movement of Mickey, it just didn't fit with the music and the score, what have you. And the other thing is, I'm so glad that they kept the evil queen sequence when she transforms into the old hag, where now Disneyland, she just automatically is the old hag without the transformation. So I'm so glad that Walt Disney World kept that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are thankful for the music that they maintained that as well, because I think a lot of people have reservations about Disneyland's version now that doesn't that there's new arrangements and so forth incorporated into that show. I do have my fair share of problems with Disneyland's version, but I think you're right, OG. The organic nature of it just kind of popping up and providing this kind of show experience that you were seemingly kind of ignoring throughout your entire day. Now it's this kind of this setting for this amazing show, spectacular, that takes place before you. It's a really special thing, and I don't think there's anything else that can really capture that. I will say, as part of this auditorium setup, though, I mean, I think this is the best use that I've seen them make for it. They've utilized it, I think, in phenomenal way, more and better than they ever have before. So I do, I mean, for this version of the show, I think it's the best version that we've seen so far, bar none. What do you guys think about this new segment, replacing the Pocahontas segment?
I was just about to mention it, that it was way overdue. I think that Pocahontas scene was just very long. It took a big chunk of the show of what it was supposed to be about. For these segments, and I did mention this to OG when we were doing our Q&A recording, that I felt like, to me, I do like what Disney was going with it, but I still felt that it was a little bit too choppy. So it's like they took the Pocahontas scene that was too long, and then they have these segments where I feel like they're being rushed just to kind of hurry up and let's see how many characters we could put in this one scene. It's like, maybe pick one or two and really like showcase them rather than just show like 2 seconds worth of character introduction and then move on to the next one.
It's interesting. My mother had the same opinion. She almost felt it was a little harmonious, like in that way, where it was going just maybe a little bit too fast before you can get really invested into the characters or the songs that you're actually hearing. But
I will say, I am glad, and again, OG and I talked about this, that I'm glad that when they did the Elsa scene, that it was for Into the Unknown and not Let It Go. I like how they kind of move forward than just that typical, oh, here comes Elsa, she's going to sing the typical Let It Go. So I'm glad that they kind of showcased Frozen 2 for that sequence.
Yeah, and I think the quickness of this stuff is very much tailored to this new generation that has grown up on TikTok. They get 30-second little videos, right? So the attention spans are different. I mean, everything they produce now kind of has that quickness to it, where before you ride an old attraction like Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, and it's a slow burn. That ride does not like immediately throw you into anything. Compare that to something like Mission Breakout, where the minute you sit in your chair, you're already moving. And it's just from the start. And I think that is really attributed to the fact that the generations are different. They just are, and they want that quickness. They get everything now is at their fingertips, whether that be content, whatever they want to watch. They don't have to wait for it anymore on TV. They click on it. It's fast. And that, I think the Imagineers and Disney is adapting to that a little bit with this stuff, in my opinion.
Unfortunately is correct. I think I didn't really have a problem with the pacing. Problem with two things. One is if it was Into the Unknown, maybe I would be a little bit more receptive to the actual inclusion of Elsa that we see there. But that's not. It's actually Show Yourself, which is kind of a deep cut. I think my reservation with that one being that it's like,
I said Into the Unknown. It was Show Yourself.
It was just minor correction. I would be happy if it was Into the Unknown, but because of Fantasmic's, let's say, rehab schedule, right? I mean, this is one of the this is the biggest change that we've seen to the show in its entire history. It does not get updated that frequently. So if it's going to go for another 20 years, how relevant is Show Yourself going to be? Wouldn't it have been better or maybe even safer to go with a little bit more of a more popular song from the Frozen canon, just for that audience expectation? That's kind of where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure I would have gone with that necessarily, that song selection. Now, if it was part of another show that maybe is updated more frequently, maybe I can see Show Yourself being a good inclusion. But I don't know. I'm hesitant on this. The other thing too, show my screen here just for another round. This was the previous Pocahontas segment, and I will juxtapose this with the news segment here. Do you think there's something missing here? Something missing?
Yeah.
That's right. The plethora of actors. It's a little sparse, this news segment here.
Yeah.
Even in the Mulan segment or even in the Aladdin segment, where you could have crowd shots or maybe an army represented, they don't. It's just I think there's what? I mean,
there's two actors for Mulan and 2 actors for Aladdin, because they had the one palace guard with Aladdin on the one side of the mountain, and then Aladdin swings over, and it's
and I think there's some villagers at the bottom there. So I mean, maybe we're talking like 10 actors in total for this entire new sequence versus what you see here. I mean, there are colonialists, there are pilgrims, Native Americans, and so forth, and it is drawn out, yes, but I appreciate the old fire effects and so forth. It's just, I don't know. There's just a little bit of a punch, I guess, that's missing with this new segment, in that it's a little bit sparse. And I think that was also maybe some cost cutting, right? They didn't maybe necessarily want to have that many actors on hand. Also, too, maybe they didn't want to create as many costumes as they did for the previous segment. So, one can point to maybe some reasons for the lack of inclusion of more characters featured in these segments. Also, too, I want to say, I guess during the hype for it by Disney, they said that the Aladdin segment would feature stunts never before seen, even though they're basically just rehashes of the old John Smith swing and the trampoline that they used to have before. George, what is your take on this? I mean, they kind of just did what they did before, just rebranded it.
Yeah, they just rebranded I think that's, again, how Disney does. They just kind of take something that's already there and just kind of rework it so they don't really have to put more money out for it. It is pretty much
there it is.
Where it So
you're absolutely right.
So basically what they did was they took the whole sequence of Pocahontas with a battling scene, and then they kind of incorporated that a little bit with Mulan, because you have the 2 actors that are doing their fighting. Yeah, exactly. And then you have the stunt swing in from John Smith, and now it's Aladdin. So it's like they still kept those little pieces here and there, but they just broke them up into small sequences from different films.
I wanted to ask you guys, because this is a trend we're seeing, right? With kind of minimizing the physical people in these shows. We saw a pullback also with our Main Street Electrical Parade when it returned this last summer. There were less cast, right? Now, I think there might be something to be said about this recent movement over the past, I would say maybe 10 years, this kind of like fight for higher wages and what have you. Walt Disney World right now, as we speak, they're having union issues. They haven't been able to come to a deal in regards to these unions. I mean, if you're Disney, you're probably looking at this going, okay, we seem to be having issues with constant problems with cast and pay and unions and yada, 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 yada. Is that kind of like the mindset behind some of these decisions? Like, obviously you can't do with no cast, but if it's constantly a thorn in Disney's side, so to speak,
if they can reduce it, they'll do it.
Right. I think that might be a thing here. And that's why I said in many videos, with the Magic Key class action suit, you're spooking Disney away from the Magic Keys, because this is how they respond when you become a thorn in their side. Cast, It's constant issues with the pay and the unions, and yada, yada, yada. So what's the response? We'll have less, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the nature of the beast, isn't it? I mean, I think Disney definitely wants to reduce its cast member footprint. Let's say the amount of cast members that they have on hand. Any one time, I think they want to get close to that yield management strategy that they implemented during the reopenings as closely as possible, and really only add more roles as necessary. And so I think this is a reflection of that. And OG, you're right. I mean, it's an extremely tight labor market. So it's not even that they necessarily want to do these things. They do. But it's just that they have to in order to actually have as many facilities as they want open. Because there's just in that southern California market when we're talking about Disneyland, or that Central Florida market when we're talking about Walt Disney World, there's just a very limited pool in which to actually pull cast members, from, let's say, a good, potential employees and so forth. I mean, it's a very it's a difficult situation. This is also why they've reduced the Disney look, let's say, and they had their reasons that they talked about for which they were doing it, and all of those, I gotta be honest, those were bullshit, because they were doing it to get around some of the pay issues and some of the high standards that they would have that would limit their potential for recruitment. Now, I've gotten it from a pretty good source that I guess the reducing of the standards of the Disney look didn't actually help with that goal in any meaningful way, which was surprising to me. But it tells you the mindset. Expect more of this, I would say, as we move further ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And one last thing I have to mention about Fantasmic is I was hoping for it. I know it wouldn't be to the extent of Disneyland's version, but I thought that they were going to do something with the Maleficent Dragon, something big, something spectacular. No, we still got that oversized fucking Jim Henson Muppet of a dragon.
Yeah. That's another thing.
Yeah.
The dragon.
Well, also, too,
The dragon.
The Steamboat Willie segment as well is.
That's yeah,
and that's why
bad as always.
Yeah, and that's why that organic thing that I talked about with Disneyland's version is even more relevant, because it's like they utilize the Columbia, they utilize the Mark Twain, these magnificent, the steamboat and the ship and all that into the show. It's not like this kind of cheesy, cheap looking boat they built just for the show, like the Steamboat Willie thing. I don't know. It just hits different. It just hits different,
It does. And I guess the budget that was drawn up for Walt Disney World's version was very reflective of what the Disneyland version was, even though they had so much infrastructure in which they could actually repurpose and use for the actual show itself. So, when you have to build an entire auditorium, this amphitheater, right? And you have to put up this mountain. Now you're limited in what you can do on the back end there. And unfortunately, that dragon and that awful tugboat is what I call it remains, and it really is quite unfortunate. But you're right, OG. Their ability to repurpose stuff like the Columbia, the Mark Twain, it just really is what takes that show and just brings it up a whole nother notch. Now, when you add in Murphy the Dragon, it's just it becomes an absolute spectacular. Whereas some of these things are stuck in the 90s over at Walt Disney World, but isn't that the case for so much at that resort? Yeah, pretty much. Well, and now moving on to our final segment as part of Citrus Corner today, we're going to move over from Walt Disney World and we're going to go over to Universal. Ooh, shall we speak of it? I hear something. There you go. Yes, I think we are moving over to Universal Studios.
So
there it is.
Universal Orlando threw everyone a little bit of a curveball on top of Epic Universe, on the rise, with all these massive lands and Universal's IP and what have you. But no, are they going to stop there? No. They released a statement stating they will be bringing exciting new family entertainment to the Universal Studios Florida Park for guests. But sadly, they are removing some of the original classic sections that made up Universal Studios Florida, and that includes Fievel's Playland, Woody Woodpecker's Nut House Coaster, Curious George Goes to Town, and the DreamWorks destination that did the meet and greets for Shrek and Donkey. And I don't really have like a full connection to it because I didn't really go to these growing up as I did with Disney. So I can't be completely bummed, but I do have to concur that we were having this conversation before the recording. I think out of everything, it would have to be Fievel's Playland that would just kind of hit just a little bit because American Tail, like growing up and watching that was like one of the quintessential animated movies before Disney hit that Renaissance era. So it's like the American Tail really got us through the 80s kind of drop point from Disney animation. So I am kind of bummed to see Fievel's Playland go, but I'm very curious to see what's going to take the place because it's a big chunk of land that's going to be removed for this. So whatever they have planned, it's going to be pretty big.
I hope whatever they do is. I'm not a fan of like. Oh man, here let me share my screen. Okay, this is from Orlando Park Stop, by the way. Alicia Stella, she's fantastic in regards to reporting about Universal.
Absolutely.
I'm not a fan of like. Okay, Woody Woodpecker's Kid Zone. For me. That's I could see something like that at Chuck E. Cheese or something like a kid zone. Universal can do much better than that, and that's one of the issues I had even with the Play Pavilion at Epcot when they announced the Play Pavilion. It all sounds very kiddie. It sounds like the play zone over at McDonald's, right? Like the little plastic tubing and all that. I don't know. I think these big time studios like Disney and Universal get away from this stuff. Like you can make something for kids, but not be so blatantly for kids where it comes off cheap. It screams Chuck E. Cheese to me. It does. And I'm not shedding any tears. I think that when they remove that stuff, I think that they will definitely improve upon it. Hopefully they don't go in that same direction. I agree with you, George. Fievel is an amazing character. I love American Tail. I'm not really familiar with the Playland, but I love that movie. It's a masterpiece in animation. I mean, come on, it's what Steven Spielberg. It's great. It's absolutely great. That's the old school IP that Universal used to have a lot of that actually I was much more connected to, much more interested in than this new kind of wave of like Minions and Fast and Furious.
See, that's where I was with you. Like, I'm like Fievel, Rocky and Bullwinkle. Like, that's like anytime Back to the Future. Exactly. Yeah. Like anytime that I would think of Universal, it would take me back to those films.
Yeah.
The Fievel's Playland actually used to exist in Universal Studios Hollywood over here on the West Coast, and I remember going to that. I'm playing around there frequently back when I was a kid in the early '90s. So. I wasn't aware that they even had a Fievel's Playland until a couple of years back when I actually heard that they were getting rid of it as part of their original intentions for Nintendo Land. That was originally going to take up this area before they moved that concept over to the third theme park concept in the form of Epic Universe that we're seeing today. But that at that time was also going to include E.T. as well, and that I know had a lot of fans had a lot of reservations about in this version of this area leaving here. Looks like E.T. will be retained, which is good. I know good. Steven Spielberg himself was pretty pissed that they got rid of E.T. Over there on the West Coast, and he was very against them getting rid of it on the East Coast as well. It looks like that will be retained, which is a good thing. I do think that adds to the variety of attractions that Universal has been cultivating for the last number of years over there on the East Coast. So that is good. But it's not super surprising to me that they're repurposing this area for something new. I guess the question is I mean, I would love to know what concepts that they have in mind for this area that they feel is a worthy successor to some of these places like Fievel's Playland and Woody Woodpecker and so forth. I know that they removed, I think, the Curious George area from Universal Studios Hollywood for what was it for? I think it was Wizarding World at that point. So, do they have something like that in mind? I don't know. Could.
Well, now Alicia Stella in this video, actually, right here.
Oh, okay.
I watched this. She was saying that she didn't know for sure, but she was saying the rumor is leading towards a DreamWorks area. Like that's kind of like the front runner for this whole little space. She didn't get into like exactly what that would be necessarily, but I don't know. That would be interesting.
It's probably going to stay kid friendly though.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, George.
But now they said that they were going to remove the DreamWorks meet and greet for Shrek and Donkey. So would they be removing that completely just to put in more DreamWorks?
Yeah, probably to reshift the area
that would
around.
be the case. Like if that would be the case.
I would think that if it is going to go with the DreamWorks type area, that Shrek and Donkey might have a place there, but one that's a little bit more formal fitting, you know.
Okay.
So we'll see, but I mean, Universal Studios Florida definitely needs, I think, kid-friendly attractions. I think that's a big part of. Oh, you can see right there. I think that's a big part of making these family destinations, and so losing this many kid-friendly attractions is kind of it's surprising, but I think it is to make way. Probably, I think Alicia is correct. It's probably to make way for kid-friendly attractions in the modern era.
Okay, now I have a question for you both, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this subject with you both, and this actually ties into Disney, is even to the beginning of our conversation when we were bringing up the recession and what have you, and these companies have to do what they have to do to stay afloat, and people are saying, well, Disney, they're holding on to their money with so-and-so, and I do agree in the sense of that if Disney doesn't feel like there's going to be a threat to anything or healthy competition, they're going to hold on to their money. But in the same way that if all these companies are equally hurting, then for Universal to, on the back of building an entire amusement park or theme park, that they're also going to add this into the mix, and yet they are still staying afloat. They are still going strong. And I still say that Disney is even more popular than Universal in that sense of with immersive storytelling through the queues, through the attractions themselves, through the lands. So why can't Disney still do on the same back as what Universal is doing? They can't really use that excuse to say, oh, because it's the recession. Even though, yes, they are going to hurt with the recession. Yeah. But why can't they still do something of what Universal is doing?
I think it comes down to like with the pandemic. Here's the thing: Universal, they have theme parks for sure, but they don't have the footprint that Disney has in themed entertainment. Disney, when the pandemic hit, it shut down all of Disney's parks, right? And they have more parks than Universal. Disney also has cruise lines that were shut down. I mean, Disney lost way more money in this pandemic than Universal did. Universal has a lot of parks, absolutely, but not as much as Disney. And Disney also has more cast members. So it's like that old saying, right? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. That's kind of the case here, I think. I think the impact was less for Universal because they just have less.
Which is kind of crazy because Disney had so strategically and so aggressively diversified in all these different industries. And then when all of them are shut down at once because, all of them involve mass amounts of people, it's like, oh, shit. What do we do? Whereas Comcast was a communications division. They're a communications company primarily. And that was their expertise, right? That's what they specialize in, and obviously communications. It was on the upswing, whereas Disney type product outside of Disney Plus was on the downswing. So I think it's a combination of two things. I think it's individual factors relating to both those companies, but also too. I think it's what was I thinking as well? Wait, there was something else I was thinking. Oh yeah, a difference in strategy. I think OG. I think you're right in that Disney's already in the theme parks business. They're number ones. They're top dogs. That's never going to change. And I do agree that it's not going to really change with Epic Universe. So like, why move if we don't have to? Especially right now, where the cash flow discrepancies between the two companies is so vastly different, right? I mean, Disney has to pay Comcast $8 billion for Hulu pretty soon here, which they can turn around and apply those monies and resources towards attractions and theme park concepts and so forth. Whereas Disney, they're stuck paying a debt load, and now you could add $8 billion on that as well. So I think the cash flow situations are different, which is why there's a disparity here. But the strategy for Universal is market capture. Disney, they're not necessarily in that business as of yet, and I think that's why we're seeing these things play out. It's really a reflection of these two differing philosophies.
Yeah, well, it's like, we're in a very political season right now. A great analogy would be you have two candidates, right? If you have one candidate who's leading the other candidate by a huge percentage, right? The candidate that's leading has no incentive to do 20 different debates with the person that's trailing him or her.
Correct.
So Disney is like leading. There's no incentive for Disney to keep doing a debate every week. Right. It's the same idea. And the candidate that's kind of trailing, they want more debates. They're trying to gain more people into their camp. So that's what we're seeing here is Universal. They have to kind of build up that market share. They have to bring in more people. And the way to do that is build. Disney, they got the leader ready. They're sitting on top. There's not that necessity to do that necessarily. And
me personally, I'd kind of already have it in my mind that I want Disney to stay on top. I want Disney to stay number one. So, I mean, if that's the case, that it has to be for, them to stay number one, then, I'm all for it. Although I will say that I would really love to see them do something with the villains. I really would. Not as a cheesy, cheap cop-out, but something spectacular.
Well, I think the only way we get a villains type setup at all in terms of in Walt Disney World is if they maybe not be repositioned as number two, but maybe a more scrappier Disney is the only way that those things can manifest themselves. Myself personally, I wouldn't necessarily mind if the number two. Now they have to kind of compete, and kind of go into that market share game themselves. Michael Eisner, he was very, very competitive, and we saw with that kind of competitive nature, that competitive attitude, just the unparalleled expansion during his time period when he did have to compete with.
That is true, because if you stay number one, you can't go any further than that. You're stuck at number one. That is true.
Yeah. So I don't know. I invite the competition. Do I think Universal strategy is sound? I mean, I think there are aspects of it that will be. Time will tell how much they are. But I think it is fascinating to see how one theme park property can, they can't help themselves but expand. And another, well, after Tron, we'll see.
Well, and I think competition is good, but it's also very risky. I mean, it's not a guaranteed motivator. And they might not, look, here's the thing too. If, let's say, for example, Universal does overtake Disney, right? And they really do damage to Disney. Well, then Disney financially isn't even in a good position to even invest more money if they're losing so much, right? So, do they necessarily invest more? Can they invest more? I would be lying if I said it doesn't make me it doesn't make me nervous to have that happen, because I think that you could. I don't know. It's risky. It could go the way of the Michael Eisner route, right? And they can get motivated and they can find the way to find the money to get it done, or it can go the Blockbuster Video route, So we might not be here with a Disney necessarily if they are topped and they start to really lose that market share. So it's a risky proposition.
I don't think they would. I don't think they would be cannibalized to that extent overnight. Where people are like, so as these things drift, I think Disney would be incentivized to have them drift backward as well. We saw that with Avatar, Pandora. We also saw that with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I think there would be more responses like that in order to prevent further cannibalization of their product and or their market share in terms of guest spend and so forth. So I think they'll be okay. I think they would respond sooner than that.
But it depends on the response, because the blockbuster thing didn't happen overnight either. And if you wait too long or you don't get it right when you're supposed to.
That's true, but there are plenty of indicators that Disney can use, at least in the theme park space. The video space is a little bit different. But I think in the theme park space, there are plenty of indicators to tell them, okay, we need to invest here, shore this up, that kind of thing. I think we'll be okay. But you're right. I mean, if Epic Universe really does not blow the doors off and you have a crazy trend line in one direction. Yeah, I mean, it could hurt. That is definitely possible.
Or if it turns out to be a major flop, then it would have been money invested that Disney used for nothing. So it's almost like, and that's why I think that they're going to wait to see what the fans' response is with Epic Universe first before anything.
And isn't it funny too, like how Universal has really been a thorn in Disney's side since Walt. I mean, it was Universal that stole Oswald from Walt Disney.
Yes, it was.
I mean, these two companies have kind of been
rivals.
Yeah. I mean,
tale as old as time.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, we'll definitely just have to wait and see and hope for the best. But I want to thank you both for joining me today with, as Mr. Vash Sky says, with these robust discussions and for all of you watching and listening, definitely please comment down below your thoughts, your opinions, your take on. Do you think Disney is best at number one, or would you strongly say that maybe they'd be better off at number two so they can come back up to number one? What's your take on everything? Anything that we talked about today, Blizzard Beach, Fantasmic, the resort hotel discount, anything, or even something that we didn't discuss, put it in the comments down below. Who knows? It may show up in a future video. And of course, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today with this discussion. I always have a blast recording with you fellas. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Vash Sky. Where could everyone find you on social media, sir?
Well, the best place to find me is going to be at Vash Sky on Twitter. It's right down there. And like you said before, I think it was earlier in this show or the last, it was, it's an interesting place to be now that Elon owns it. So go ahead and join me there and we'll go to the ride together. It'll be fun. But that's definitely there for all the, as Christine Waystons McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. Very, very interesting. And, well, I mean, hey, look, if we're talking about bargains, as I think Christine Waystons McCarthy would be interested in, and as Walt would say,
and there's the biggest bargain of all.
The biggest bargain of all. That's correct. I think the biggest bargain that you can possibly get is going to be here at Orange Grove 55, and you can see me there at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Which one is it going to be today? Let's see. We gotta do something here. Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Haven't done that in a while. Yeah. We'll do that one.
That's an oldie but goodie.
Oldie but goodie, right? Definitely, guys, subscribe here. I do actually think it's a great bargain. We're hustling every day to give you as much content as possible. So we do appreciate your support. Thank you for that. And Orange Grove, where can they find you?
Or you can find me right here on Orange Grove 55. So, yeah, I mean, and George, I want to thank you for being such a gracious host today, talking some Walt Disney World. It's always fun being on the Citrus Corner Show, talking Florida with you and Vash. Had a great time. And again, thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have to throw in Chewie there. And with that being said, or lack thereof, everyone, you have a magical day. Take care.